What if I told you that the Vatican helped Europe colonize the world, that it justified European colonialism in the name of spreading Christianity, that there are papal decrees that allowed European empires to take over entire countries? And for what? To allow colonizers to subjugate people, to take away their lands, wage war on their cultures, impose a self-conceived notion of racial superiority over them. And all of this just because the colonizers claimed that they were the ones who discovered new lands. So they had a right to rule over those new lands. Now the Vatican has come forward and apologized for what it did. It has apologized for helping the colonizers. Here's a report.
Have you heard something called the doctrine of discovery? It's Europe's version of finders, keepers. It's what European colonizers used to subjugate the world. The doctrine was cited by Europeans who discovered new lands, and the doctrine traces its roots back to the Vatican and to the Catholic Church. Now the Church has apologized for helping colonizers in their conquests. On Thursday, the Vatican issued an unprecedented statement. It officially apologized for its historical role in justifying colonialism by European powers. The Vatican said, "The Roman Catholic Church repudiates those concepts that fail to recognize the inherent human rights of indigenous peoples, including what has become known as the legal and political doctrine of discovery." It also declared that the doctrine is not part of the Christian's faith, but the Vatican is centuries late. The doctrine of discovery is a concept laid out in the so-called papal bulls. What are these? These are usually official statements from the head of the Catholic Church. That would be the Pope. So no less than the popes were involved in justifying European colonialism. Their decrees were used extensively in the conquest of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Africa, and the United States. The colonizers claimed that they had the approval of the Church to have sovereignty, property, and commercial rights in lands they discovered. Here's an example. Papal decrees in the 15th century permitted Portugal to subjugate Muslims and the non-Christians in Africa. That's not even the ugliest part of these decrees. The Vatican was quite explicit when it came to who Europe could colonize. It could only be non-Christians. So colonialism was essentially used as a tool by the Vatican to spread Christianity across the world. And the colonized countries paid a huge price. Take Canada, for instance. Between the 19th and the 20th centuries, more than 150,000 indigenous children were taken hostage in Canada. They were snatched away from their families and lodged against their will in the re-education institutions. Here, they were subjected to unspeakable atrocities. They were physically assaulted and sexually abused. Many of them didn't survive. They were buried in mass graves that are still being discovered in Canada. Last year, Pope Francis visited Canada. He apologized to the indigenous people for what the Vatican put them through. In 2015, too, the Pope apologized for the Catholic Church's action in Bolivia. He sought forgiveness not only for the offenses of the Church, but also for the crimes committed against the native people during the so-called conquest of America. Just so you know, European colonism was a vast and often very violent project. The whole world at some point or the other has been under the control of a European power. Look at the French Empire. It ruled over territory greater than the size of the Europe itself. Then there was the British Empire, the most notorious of them all. And its peak was about 25% of the world population was a subject of the British Empire. Apologies are welcome and long overdue. But preparations will be the closest they'll come to making amends.